Welcome to One Insight. My name is Rich Litvin. I grew up in London and I now live in LA. And this is a podcast for extraordinary top performers. You see, I've coached some of the most successful and talented people on the planet. I see what most people cannot see, and I dare to say what most people wouldn't dare to say. And what I know about success is that on the other side of it, it can actually be lonely. You can feel like more of an imposter the more successful you become. And when you're the most interesting person in the room, you're actually in the wrong room. I coach around insight. Life looks one way, something happens, the world looks different, and your entire world changes. It can happen in an instant. And this podcast is called One Insight because a single insight can change everything. Vicki is a consultant to companies that range from startups to a $500 billion corporation. What I see in Vicki is that with 20 years or more behind her of expertise in working with high-level leaders and organizations, it's time for her to start sharing her gifts. That looks like it's time for her to be a thought leader. And in this conversation, I teach her 3 tools to draw out these gifts and insights that she has. And I draw apart the 2 words, thought leader. And I help her understand how to get deeper into both of those. And by the end, she's ready. She's ready. If you want to step into thought leadership, then listen to this call and start using these tools immediately. You are so much closer than you imagine. And the world needs your message. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, I'm glad to be talking to you today. For those of you who are listening, if you haven't yet heard it, one of the previous podcast episodes, I asked Vicki to speak to my community and to share a model that she's created and is teaching called the 3 phases of uncertainty. And it was such a powerful presentation. It really impacted us when she gave it to my private community called 4PC, that I invited her to go to my wider community. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people listen live, and many more have listened later on the podcast and on YouTube. So Vicki, whilst you're a member of 4PC, my community of people who play a big game, one of the entrance requirements is that you can be a little bit in awe of us, but we have to be a little bit in awe of you. I like to play with peers. So it's nice to be talking to a peer in this moment.
Thank you, Rich. Feelings definitely mutual.
That's how we play.
Yeah.
So this is a chance for me to play with you and coach you around anything you like. And we chatted for a couple of minutes before we began. And there's a couple of things that you wanted to talk about and an idea I had for you, and they seem to merge. And the thought I have for you is, oh yeah, what would it be like if in a year's time, you're known as a thought leader in your field? And I'm curious how that lands as I say this in this moment.
I feel it in the base of my belly. It feels very grounding and real, and then very edgy as to go from here to there.
Great. So don't worry about the process. And I like, me, I have a compass when I'm making decisions. Something's a little bit exciting and a little bit scary at the same time. I go down that fine line down the middle. And it's my sense of that's the energy you're feeling. A little bit exciting. Like I kind of like that, but a little fear at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it feels. It's that feeling of, am I interesting enough? Would people want to listen to me? And I know that's my own story, but that's definitely...
You're not alone. What that is, that's the voice inside of you that's saying, stay safe.
Yeah.
Throughout human history, if you did not have that voice, if you said, I've got a message, let me tell you what I think, you didn't survive. If people didn't like your message, you literally were killed or you were thrown out of the tribe and then you died anyway. So when people say that you hear that statistic, people are more afraid of public speaking than death, it's a misunderstanding. For most people throughout most of history, public speaking meant death and we feel it viscerally when we imagine speaking to people.
Yeah, and I still have that feeling. It's not quite the same, but it's that edge.
Good. Well, I don't want it to ever go away, because the thing about being a thought leader is that you keep thinking. So you keep stretching the boundaries of what you're thinking about. If you start telling the same, you've got this one idea and you start telling it again and again, you get bored, you become boring. You're no longer a thought leader.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of thoughts.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
let's see what, and one of the ways to step into that is to find out, well, what's my message or what's my mission? And they're very connected, so that you get, wow, this is so important, I have to share this message. Or this is my mission, so I'm going to talk about it because I can't not. Let me play with you in a couple of ways to start to draw that out. The first idea I have is, what's a counterintuitive truth for you? And this is how it sounds. Most people think ... The truth is ... What's a counterintuitive truth for Vicki?
Most people think that life is a struggle, that it's really challenging, it's really difficult, it's full of resistance. The truth is it's not. We put up all that resistance and struggle and challenge throughout the way we think about the world.
Love it. That's great. I thought you were going to pause after the truth is it's not. And then it was a little bit abstract, but actually what I heard, most people think life is a struggle. There's lots of resistance. The truth is we're creating the resistance. Yeah. That was powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was great. So for context, by the way, for anyone who's listening, this isn't some abstract thought. You've worked with organizations for years, from startups that are just creating funding and getting traction for the very first time to billion-dollar corporations, right?
$500 billion corporations.
There you go. Let's not lose that one.
Yeah. And they all suffer and struggle with the same thing. And so much is the ego and what we've made up in the world, as opposed to who we intrinsically are and how the world is designed. Nice.
So one of the things that we have to do is find a way that our message can land for our people. I will talk to high-level leaders about intuition without ever using the word intuition. I'll say, have you ever walked into a room and felt like you could cut the atmosphere with a knife? And they went, oh, yeah. You ever had someone who on paper looked like an amazing hire, but the moment they sat down in a chair in front of you, everything inside of you said, hell no, no matter what it says on paper? That's intuition. And then I'll say, intuition is actually high-level, complex pattern recognition. And they go, oh. This is where I start to distinguish the things that I see and translate it so that my people can hear it and understand it.
Yeah. Is there a question?
No, I'm just seeing where that lands for you.
Yeah, no, it's being able to talk to them in a language that makes sense given their environment. Mm.
What's one thing that most people say about whatever? Well, let me ask you first. What's the thing that you do most? Is it scaling businesses? Is it growing leadership teams? In business terms, what would most people describe as what you do? Not your language, their language.
Their language would be transforming the organization. So it would have typically been an old style command and control. Maybe it's a founder with specific ways of operating the organization. But it's very much based on doing the best they can, having built the business from what they know. But for the time they're at, it's no longer appropriate. So it might be, the most common manifestation of it is that old style of command and control is the antithesis to how most people love to operate, feeling like they're being uplifted and they're in these autonomous teams and they're able to create a sense of freedom and still be very clear about the objectives, the goals, know where they're going, but they don't have somebody controlling their every movement. And that tends to be the space where I'm brought in to help organizations that are pivoting away from a much more traditional 80s style management hierarchy to an agile, fluid, flexible holacracy, more of a free way of operating, but still have the right level of guardrails. Because some organizations go too far, they have no guardrails, and then it collapses. So there's that middle ground.
Great. I love the way you described that. That's really great. That's their language. They'll understand that. That old-fashioned model of leadership we're all beginning to see doesn't work any longer. How do you go beyond that? And how do you pause at the moment where you don't go too far into chaos where it all collapses anyway? And I got the depth of understanding you have. I don't need any more for this. What's one of the most common thoughts about how to transform leadership that, between you and me, is BS? Yeah, there you go.
I see it all the time. A new leader will come on board, and the very first thing they'll do is a restructure. They want to feel like there's action. They want to feel like they're moving something along, but they have no knowledge to base that on. They're pattern matching based on what they've done before. But every culture is so unique. And so what works in one company, I absolutely guarantee is not going to work in the next. And the best you can do is spend time deeply understanding the cultural landmines before you figure out your strategy. And they don't want to do that. They often aren't brought in to do that. They're often brought in for change. So it's that balance of how do you get your first 90, 180 days to make enough traction that gives you time to truly understand? Because otherwise it just feels like you've moved the deck chairs around on the ship, and everybody else in the organization is looking at the chaos and the ensuing change as nothing more than shuffling things around a little bit.
Nice. I love it with each of these things that we've done so far, the counterintuitive truth and the belief that's most common that is actually BS gives, what I can see already is if we had time, you could spend an hour talking to me about each of those. And then you could divide each of those into 17 different distinctions and talk about each one of those for an hour.
Yeah.
This is where thought leadership comes from. It starts by thinking about what do most people think? What's the real truth underneath that? So I love that. I see that in you.
And what I've always been able to do is see the whole system of how it works together. So how the pieces of the leadership team and the managers and the organization and their process and the way they operate, how the whole thing hangs together. So every time they're trying to make a shift, I can see the domino effect of everything else. And I've come to realize thinking at that systemic or metasystemic level is not where most people operate. Most are down in the tactics and the operations, and they don't really realize the consequences. Whereas I'm always thinking up 4 or 5 thinking levels, like what is the system? And if you change one of these pieces, what exactly is going to happen? And I can't help but see that. So if I go into a restaurant, I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking around the restaurant and I'm thinking, well, if they move the cashier here, they have this person there, I can see the whole thing and what's needed. And I haven't figured out how to share that in a way that resonates with somebody who isn't at that thinking level, because it sounds a bit, it sounds a bit up in the sky, and don't really know what you're talking about.
It literally is up in the sky. Let me catch that. By the way, you have so many bracelets, I think, that are rattling or rings or something that's...
Oh, maybe it's my earrings?
Oh, maybe, yeah. Sorry, I do this to you every time we get on a call.
I put on jewelry for you, Rich, and it's just work.
So yeah, you do think up here. You think up at the 30,000 foot level.
Yeah.
So there already, there's an article in there or a video in there or a podcast episode in there, thinking at 30,000 feet. What you have to do, and it's hard to do for yourself initially, is have a conversation with somebody where you just talk naturally about the things that you see, and then maybe record it. And either they'll, like myself in this conversation, they'll point out to you, or you'll listen later and realize, oh, there's the domino effect. That was beautiful. You live at this level of, they're in the level of, I have a distinction around simple, complicated, and complex. Most people want the simple answers. Some people make a lot of money selling complicated answers. That's the big consulting firms. But you live in the level of complexity. We all live in the world of complexity. We're finding this out right now. One shift in the world with a virus, and everyone's suddenly realizing how complex things are. You understand that. You see complexity and you cut through complexity. When you transition to becoming a thought leader, it feels overwhelming. It's out there. Like, those are the people who are thought leaders, and then there's me. Well, break apart the words. thought leader. You got to think and you be willing to lead. So thinking is sometimes hard to do on our own. We can do it in conversation with somebody else. And these are these 3 tools I'm teaching you 2 so far around what's the counterintuitive truth. And then what's a belief that most people think that is BS. And the third one is a tool around our fears. But what comes next is then you got to lead. You got to be a leader. You find ways to get your thoughts out, and then you got to start sharing them. And it doesn't matter how. When I first started sharing my thoughts, Vicki, it was with one client at a time. And then I was on the faculty of a couple of coaching schools, and people asked me what I was learning about, and I began to share it there. And gradually over time, that community and that audience grew. But I never worried about how do I grow an audience. I just shared stuff. So here's the third tool. It's around, what's the message you're afraid to say? I mean, you're always doing this with leaders, but either you never actually say it to them, or you wait until you've got so much safety before you finally say it.
But they are deeply loved, and they live in a world of superabundance. Their health, their well-being, their wealth, their relationships. And if they would get out of their way and know how deeply loved they are and how much they are a beautiful, perfect reflection of God, they would have the life that they're trying to get.
What I hear behind that is it's edgy to say that out loud.
Very.
And what I hear behind that is leadership is deeply spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not something that is recognized or valued in the corporate world.
Yeah. Okay.
It's woo-woo, it's stuff you don't talk about.
Yeah.
But it's the truth.
And if you're a thought leader, your job is to speak truths into the world. Not the truth. Nobody has the truth. These are your truths. And some people will love them and some people won't. I just reposted an old article on my blog called I Find Rich Litvin Repugnant. Title of the article, because I found that as a comment on a YouTube video that I'd made. And then what made it worse is that somebody had replied to that and said, oh yeah, I agree. And then gave her evidence why she thought I was even worse. Here's the thing about thought leadership. If you're not getting people criticizing you, pushing back, telling you that your stuff doesn't make sense, then you're not truly a thought leader. And that's what's scary. So whilst for some people, it is risky to their life to this day to share their stuff in the world. For most of us in the worlds that we're in, it's not actually risky, but our body feels it is. Yeah, somebody might not like you, but I promise you, every time you walk in a room, you remind somebody of their sister, their aunt, their mother, their old school teacher. They're not going to like you, whatever you say. And others are going to love you, whatever you do or say. So, but we get so worried about the people who don't like us. I get one negative comment on a Facebook post and I collapse and ignore all the positive ones.
Yeah.
It's thought leadership. To be a leader is to know it's okay not to be liked by everybody. That's how you be in leadership.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, that felt edgy, but good.
Yeah, good. I want it to be edgy. I want you to keep looking at what else am I afraid to speak out loud. It doesn't mean you have to say all those things out loud right now. You might start to share some of the edgy ones with one-on-one clients or leaders you've worked with for a while. And over time, you'll start to see how quickly it is between having a scary idea, sharing it with one person, and then begin to sharing it with more and more.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it's been my desire since coming into 4PC, and I shared it with my partners on Vulnerability Night. And it felt very edgy to say it in that one-on-one close relationship with somebody who you didn't know. And it now feels like the time to start putting it out there a little bit more than, one-on-one, share it a little bit wider. And actually
I've got a secret to tell you. This podcast is listened to by thousands of people, so it's too late.
It's out there, Rich. Yeah, and it does feel edgy.
Yeah.
But even the last few weeks, I've had a few of my clients start to share their own beliefs, and it's allowed me to go there, and it just felt so good.
Yeah.
Because then I can talk with authenticity, and it's like there's layers, and I feel like I've been not being able to share truly what's going on, but give them a little bit of the tools. I'm like, but I can give them so many more tools if I can just be truly honest with what's going on from my perspective.
It will be polarizing,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. It will filter out the people who were your clients last year and aren't meant to be your clients next year.
Yeah.
And it's what will have you grow and will have them grow, and you'll be excited about the caliber of people who are coming down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, and being able to blend seeing at the systemic level and what organizations need, and then being able to blend in what's actually going on from a true spiritual perspective, gives them the practical and the deep, and it feels really good to me.
So if you're watching or listening, what just happened is Vicki's already stepped into this. She's already beginning to play out, how will this happen? What will it do? What's the impact of this? It's already happening. So with there, I'm going to recap where I went today. I know I'm talking to someone who has an important message, but the truth is you do too. If you are listening to this, there's something that's important to you. You may be clear about what it is in this moment, or it may be a little bit further down the road, but there's a mission that you're on or a message that you have, and it's time. There are 3 ways to get clearer about what is my message, what is the mission I'm on. Number 1, what's the counterintuitive truth? Most people think this, the truth is this. Number 2, look around your field and your industry. What do most people say who are the experts in my field? There's a belief they have that I know is BS. And number 3, what are you actually afraid to say out loud? What are you scared of telling your clients, your customers, your community? That's the one that will really take you there. And you don't have to do this tomorrow. If you want to be a thought leader, it's in the title. You need to have space for thoughts and space for leadership. And to create space for thoughts, you need thinking time on your calendar. You need time to dream and to scheme. You need time to walk in nature with no technology and see what happens. You need time to wake up at 5 in the morning or go to bed at 12 at night because your mind is spinning with ideas and you're writing them down, journaling, writing, creating. And you need time for leadership. And leadership is when you say, I'm going to put a stake in the ground and start to tell people what this is about, what I'm about, what the message is, what the mission is. That's what it takes to be a leader. And tapping into both of those at some point, both Vicki and any of you who are listening who want to play this game will look back one day and go, I'm known as a thought leader in my field. That's not the same as trying to be known by thousands of people. I don't think it ever works that way. That's like some of the kids I know who want to be Instagram famous. It doesn't work that way. Get clear about what your message is, and I've given you some tools to do that, and start sharing. Whether or not you're afraid, in fact, especially if you're afraid, it's a clue there's something really important that needs to be shared. So Vicki, thanks for trusting me. I can't wait to see what happens. If you didn't catch it and you're listening in, make sure you go back to that podcast a couple of episodes ago where you hear Vicki start to step into her thought leadership with this model about the 3 phases of uncertainty. It's very powerful at this moment.
Yeah, it feels like it's time, Rich.
It is.
I don't know why it feels so edgy. Maybe because the world I work in just doesn't appreciate it in that way. Or maybe it's a story I've told myself. I don't know.
I think it's both. It will filter out some of the people who are not for you, remember?
Yeah.
And it's meant to stay edgy. If it doesn't feel edgy in a year's time, you stop playing big. So don't worry about that. That's the clue you're going in the right direction, not the reason to stop. For most of human history, it wasn't called coaching, it was called leadership. And it's what I love to do, to coach people, to lead people, and to mess with people's thinking. If you'd like more of this, or if you'd like to learn more about our community of extraordinary top performers, go to richlitvin.com/oneinsight.